There is so much going on right now in the sports world, whether it's the NBA trades, the draft tonight, the trade deadline in Major League Baseball at 2 o'clock tomorrow. So deals left and right. And here to sort it out for us right now is our pal, Jeff Erickson, from the team of Rotowire.com, your one-stop shop for all fantasy sports. We've got the NFL training camps opening up as well with the NBA trades and baseball. I don't know how we need a scorecard to keep track of all this stuff, Jeff, because there's just a ton going on right now.
Oh my gosh, it's crazy, go nuts. I'm loving it. Lots of chaos there. Throw in the Olympics too, just to make sure that there's an added layer there with the 12-hour time difference for that matter too. It's great. I just saw a trade come down that I was, really surprised by. The Rays trading away Diego Castillo to the Mariners. Don't know what they got for him yet, but and if there's another shoe dropping somewhere, if like they're going to add Kimbrel because of that or something like that, I don't know, but it's pretty wild.
It is pretty wild. Look, I still think that maybe there's a chance, that Kimbrel goes to San Diego in a deal that also involves prospects and sends Hosmer to the Cubs now that there's a vacancy there at first with the Rizzo trade to the Yankees.
That'd be lunacy by the Cubs unless they're getting the Padres to pay for most of that contract. Just crazy. It's a terrible contract, and he's not that good of a player. So even though there's an opening, I don't see that being a great fit unless they're getting like great prospects to pay for that contract, basically.
How many more years left does Chicago have on the Kimbrel trade?
Good question. I will pull that up, but I'll tell you Hosmer's deal though.
I think Hosmer is 4 years and $59 million left after this year, isn't it?
Yeah, it was an 8-year, 144, and signed in February 2018. So 4 more years left on that one. So yeah, not a good deal. Kimbrel, it was funny. Last year you would have considered his contract to be a bust. Now he's a guy that's highly sought after because of how good he's pitching right now. But it was a 3-year, $43 million one in June, an extension, so 1 more year after this. June 2019 is when he signed it.
Just it goes to show you how volatile relievers are. Yep. 1 year they look like busts, the next year they look like bargains, and they're highly sought after. It just changes so much from year to year, Jeff.
It does. It really does, and I think that's very illustrative of just the ever-shifting value. And then you can see that's maybe why the Mariners traded Kendall Graveman, even though they were 1 game out of the wild card behind the A's at the time of the trade, and he was clearly their best reliever because hey, we're selling high on him, and they're getting a kid in Toro that they like. Who's, by the way, homered in the first 2 games he's played for them too. So we'll see. Of course, you got some GMs and AJ Preller and Jerry DePoto that really love to wheel and deal. So not surprised that those 2 guys are one of the two of the busier teams at the trade deadline too.
I am fascinated to see if Scherzer ends up going to the Padres before the end of the night, especially with the Dodgers apparently getting Danny Duffy today and saying that the Dodgers are not out of the Scherzer sweepstakes just yet. Look, you could have a deal in place, but ultimately if Max doesn't want to go there, he has veto rights, which also kind of complicates things right now.
A little bit, it does. It gives him a little bit of added power, forces the teams to ante up on his salary a little bit more, maybe give him some sort of consideration, or at least, he's going to, at the end of the day, he's going to want to be on a contender. So that's going to be something that's going to happen. But it's just a question of where he ends up. I love how like a couple hours ago it was like considered to be a done deal with the Padres. Now all of a sudden, the Dodgers have a right to top it. So do these other teams. Still might be the Giants. Giants have the best record in the National League. So even after today's, they won today actually 5-0. So, that they should be still, and they've got a really deep farm system too. So you want to trade with the Giants.
Meanwhile, the Yankees say they're not done, although they just acquired Anthony Rizzo. From a fantasy standpoint, where do you put his value moving from the Cubs to the Yanks?
I mean, you love that short porch in right field, right? I mean, that's a better landing spot for him than Boston, even though he has roots in Boston and all that. And Boston has a need for a first baseman more than the Yankees do. But A, it might speak to the Yankees' concern about whether Luke Voigt's going to be able to come back, and B, maybe it's the precursor to a Trevor Story deal. That was rumored that the Yankees would try to trade for Story if they can offload Voigt's contract. So Voigt's contract isn't even that bad. So I'm not even sure why that was such a big deal, but that might be just a little bit of a smoke screen to make sure everything happens.
Absolutely. Plus, if you're a team looking to add a guy that he's been injury prone, but led the league in home runs last year. Voigt's your guy. It just goes to show you
Yeah.
how volatile things are from one year to the next.
Yeah, it does. And just keep in mind, too, with the Yankees, DH is closed. That's Stanton. So there's going to be another shoe dropping here. There has to be.
I agree with you. And by the way, with all the trades going down, there's a ton of prospects, which I know Rotowire is on top of with all the prospect rankings. So it's kind of fun, not just to see the big moves, but to know the names of who's changing teams.
Right. It's one of my pet peeves, actually, at trade deadline time. Trade him for 2 minor leaguers. Come on. You couldn't be bothered to put 2 names in that agate type. Just mention who they are. I mean, that's an important detail. I mean, but so yeah, and granted, we're still getting up to speed on who some of these guys are. But like, for instance, Alexander Vizcaino, who went over to the Cubs in the Rizzo deal, James Anderson has him as his number 171 prospect. So that's a good. He says he's a good breaking ball away from being a top 100 prospect. So that just as an indicator, Kevin Alcantara is the other guy going over in that deal. He's also in the top 300s. 239 is where we have him right now. And so that just gives you an indicator. Those are really good players. It's hard to have guys. James goes all the way to 400. Think about it there's 30 organizations, no more than like 10 to 12 players per organization get on that list. Obviously some give and take between organizations, but that's a good haul for a half a season of Rizzo.
Jeff Erickson with us from Rotowire.com as we continue here on Sports Talk. Apparently, the Yankees are also looking at a reliever, so we'll see if they can land, whether it's Kimbrel or anybody else. We know they've dealt with the Cubs in the past. That's also kind of fun to see trading partners and ultimately where that leads. Starling Marte going to the Oakland A's. Do you like that move from a fantasy standpoint? Do you like Jesus Luzardo now going into the crowded rotation that is the Marlins?
Well, all we have to do is look in the past to see that, large conglomerations of young talent in the pitching staff don't always come to fruition. I still remember that Young Guns poster on the Mets. For instance, there was Pulsifer and Wilson and Isringhausen. Isringhausen ended up having a pretty good career as a reliever, but things don't always turn out the way you think they're going to. But Luzardo, I mean, I like the deal for the Marlins. I like what they did. I actually like it from both sides, but the Marlins agreed to pay more of Marte's salary so they could get the better player in return. They get multiple years of Jesus Luzardo. Hopefully, can figure him out. Get Sixto Sanchez healthy. Get Pablo Lopez healthy. They've got this great, amalgamation of good young arms. It's just a question of getting them all in line at the same time.
Cesar Hernandez going from the Cleveland over to the White Sox. How do you like that move?
Perfect fit for the White Sox. They need a second baseman with Madrigal out for the season. This is the team that will make the playoffs. We know that. They're good at run prevention. They needed some offense. This is a perfect fit. The only thing about Cesar Hernandez is he's kind of changed as a player. He used to be a no power, good on base, good speed guy, or at least middling power. He's got 18 homers already this year, a lot of them in this last month, and he's not running anymore. It's a little Freaky Friday there, but that happens a little bit at that age for second baseman. But the fact is he can hit. He's a better guy to have in that lineup than who they were using, like Lurie Garcia or others that they're using at second base. They also added Ryan Tepera from the Cubs today, too. So that fit their 2 needs that they needed the most.
This story broke just moments ago. Apparently, Cleveland manager Terry Francona is stepping away for the remainder of the season to focus on health issues. Effective immediately, DeMarlo Hale will manage in his place.
Remember, this is something that happened last year, too, during COVID, that he stepped away for a while. I feel bad for him. Hopefully that he's going to, he'll be all right. But, man, it's kind of scary.
It is kind of scary. Absolutely right. And by the way, we've seen now the relievers in the Diego Castillo to Seattle trade. Apparently, it's right-hand pitcher JT Chargois and Austin Shenton is who's also traded. So don't know much about them. Maybe you do. And again, that's a James Anderson special, isn't it?
Yeah, Shenton is a 22-year-old third baseman. He would have spent I'm looking at what he's done recently. He's at Double-A this year. Yeah, 908 OPS. So, but he's actually 23. I take it actually now. So not that young, but young enough. And then Chargois has been around for a while, actually. Not really a name that you'd think that would be a big time name, but he's a second round pick way back in 2012. Pitching pretty well for the Mariners. 0.97 OPS, 29 to 6 K to walk. That does sound like a Rays type of find.
Yep.
That they kind of dig somebody up out of the ether. But keep in mind, Peter Fairbanks is dealing with a shoulder injury. JP Fireeisen has got a biceps injury. Nick Anderson's not back yet. Chargeway has 0 career saves, but he could get up 10 the rest of the year. I'll probably go pick him up in one of my leagues where saves are at a premium.
Why not? Why not? All right, look, before I wrap it up with you, Aaron Rodgers reported yesterday to Packers camp. That's a big story from a fantasy standpoint, isn't it? For Packer fans, for the NFL, and really for, when you look at, what could happen now with Adams and Aaron Jones and the rest of that offense, it's much more comforting knowing you got Rodgers at least for one more year in Green Bay than you would the alternative with Jordan Love.
Yeah, that's right. And we have some finality to this here. We know what's going to happen. We're not playing the guessing game. Rodgers was going pick like 110 for a while. Now he's up in the 70s again. So you can start to see that immediate turnaround in his value. Adams goes from mid to late second round to late first, early second, either the first or second receiver taken. Aaron Jones benefits from this. We have some certainty now. And that's something that's nice. And dynasty leagues, if you've been holding on to Jordan Love, at least you know there's a time when he's going to start the clock and he's going to start playing.
Absolutely right. Now, I guess that also means that the Packers can then move him next offseason. Well, what happens if he leads them to a Super Bowl? What happens if the Packers win it all this year? Then what?
Then they become the Bulls.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you saw that post. He did the thing with Devontae Adams' last dance and all that, and he kind of got mocked for it. It's like, well, you have to have a first dance first, but because they haven't been to the Super Bowl together. But we'll see what happens. I mean, at least they're going. They get one last chance to try to win one. Schedule will be tougher this year. Everything kind of went right last year. They both stayed healthy. Oh, Adams missed actually parts of 2 games, but Rodgers, stayed healthy last year after being hurt a lot the previous 2 years. So, and the schedule was kind. They didn't face too many top cover corners. It'll be a little tougher this year.
Let's talk about what you've got up on the website right now for sports fans, all the big stories at rotowire.com, Jeff.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a lot of trade deadline stuff, obviously. James Anderson's cranking away at that. I had a podcast today with Frank Stanfield from CBS where we were talking about all the trade deadline stuff that had happened. Of course, this was before Rizzo got dealt. That's the thing. Keep churning away because this time of year, I think it changes fast. But all sorts of football content, a lot of team previews going up on the site as well. A lot of our magazine content's up there. You can check it all out. Rotowire.com/free. Get your free 10-day trial. There's no credit card or anything required.
I bet you NBA fans could also enjoy some of the basketball content you got with the draft tonight and the trades going down, especially if Russell Westbrook's a Laker.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny. We haven't even mentioned that tonight's the draft. Usually it gets its own little showcase, but now with everything else going on, it's just one more log on the fire. It's crazy.
Takes a back seat, that's for sure, with everything else happening. It's unreal. All right, Jeff, terrific stuff. Thanks for the time. I'll look forward to having you right back next week. Regular time, regular day, and then we can recap all the deals and the fantasy implications.
Sounds great. Thanks, Steve.